Welcome back to Sex Crimes Defense Podcast with Chance and Jay. Chance Oberstein is a criminal defense attorney in California. I'm a media professional. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be used as legal advice. Chance, we're talking about Timothy Busfield today.
Excellent. This is an interesting case to talk about. Lots of stuff going on here.
It's January 2026. This is a very high profile case right now. Everybody's talking about it. It's probably a global news story to some degree. Timothy Busfield is I think he's an A-list actor. He's been in many recognizable productions. He's received an Emmy. I don't have to go into his catalog, his IMDb. You can search Timothy Busfield if you want to know. Because it doesn't matter, when it comes to... But he's done so much that he's not only an actor, but he's then moved on to being a director, which is very common in Hollywood. And since I know a little bit about filmmaking, it's going to come up. Because actually, the reason he's in the headlines has to do with the film set. Which makes this probably, actually, as I say that, probably not since Alec Baldwin and the gun accident has there been something this big regarding a crime and a film set in the public eye.
In New Mexico.
Wow. So the Rust shooting was in New Mexico?
I believe so, yeah.
Wow, how weird is that?
It's weird. It's
weird. Really weird.
Right.
Well, okay, and we talked about, we start off with the background of Timothy Busfield, so we've established that he's an actor, because I don't think there's a whole lot else to know there, except that there is a surfaced allegation which has to do with something that happened in a theater that was also in his past. I think it's like 25 years ago.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that.
Let's
talk about the facts of this particular incident first, because this is a really interesting case, and there are some very interesting aspects about it that I think we're going to see in the future, and it's interesting to outline, I think, what those issues are right now, because it's topical. So what are the facts? What happened here? He's an actor, he's a director, maybe, I don't know, a producer, is he? Whatever it was, he was directing on set, right?
He was on set, and I believe this is was it 2024 or 2022?
2022.
Okay. He's on set, he's directing, and he's directing a TV show, which we're all finding out it was called The Cleaning Lady. And apparently, pretty good show or whatever. And he's directing. And on many of these series, they have multiple directors, different directors per episode. You might have a director do a few episodes. You might be an executive producer that directs a couple episodes. It's hard to know exactly the structure of how that happens anymore, but he was director. I don't think he was acting in in the episode or even the show. I think he was a director on this episode, and I'm guessing a few others, because it seemed like he had developed a bit of a relationship of some kind with, these were twin boys, meaning there's one boy on camera, and it's common in Hollywood to use twins so that you can get more time out of a child actor.
Right. And, the segment involved a specific age category for the kids. So apparently, after filming, at some juncture, the kids kind of aged out of that role, right? And so they weren't coming back. So everything was fine until that particular juncture. Tell us a little bit about that.
I actually, I've known a few people that have worked with twins in the system and things like that. And it's very common for them to age out. There's also other reasons why an actor isn't brought back. And this is difficult for parents, especially, that don't understand that, listen, they just don't need they don't need that actor anymore. It's not personal. but we don't need that actor anymore. However, it can be personal, which gets into things like wrongful termination, which I think is part of the motive here, maybe. But for whatever reason, the kids they weren't brought back.
Well, and I'm just, my thinking is that they probably aged out of the role, but whatever it was, they weren't brought back, and their mother was very angry about it and made these accusations. She said her two boys were how would I say it? I don't want to say molested because that would be going too far. I would say that depends on what the definition is in New Mexico, but apparently sexually assaulted by him. And the idea was that she made these false accusations because the two boys were fired ahead of the show's final season. And so she's apparently, maybe it's alleged, that she told another cast member that she would get revenge against Busfield for cutting her sons from the final season's cast. I mean, that seems to be the nexus of where all this grew out of.
And this is where I will add this, in that this would be counted, I guess, as part of the defense, is that there are so many changes that happen on a set in a cast for so many different reasons. And so she can't assume that she knows what the studio is thinking. That is not for her to do. If they don't need that actor anymore, they don't need that actor anymore. If he's not central to the story, why would a kid continue to appear episode after episode after episode? That doesn't even make sense.
Well, the issue here is that these allegations didn't surface until after that occurred, okay, which makes them suspect in the first place. But there's different things going on here. Balance and counterbalance. But, this is the type of thing that happens in celebrity type sex cases. This right here happened after they were cut. And she made those allegations, and the studio apparently took it upon themselves to hire a firm to investigate it. Do you recall that? Did you see that in the
I do, and I want to say this too. If right now you're feeling irritated because we're leaning into the defense, stick with us, because I guarantee I can tell you that I see some things on both sides.
Well, there absolutely is, and that's what complicates the case. But interesting enough, that firm did an investigation based on her allegations and concluded nothing happened. Nothing actionable happened.
And let me say, as an outside observer, I'm going to say there's just as much credibility in that as there is in her assumption that the kids were fired improperly.
Well, here's the next thing that happened, which is really interesting. The boys were taken to the hospital, and a doctor from the University of New Mexico contacted the Albuquerque Police Department, and they, of course, contacted the police, who conducted an investigation and spoke to the boys. And at that time, the boys in 2024 didn't disclose that there was any sexual contact between them and Mr. Busfield. Apparently, they told the police that Uncle Tim, is how they referred to him, would tickle them on the stomach and legs. And neither boy cared for the tickling, but that was the extent of what happened with Uncle Tim in 2024. And then the boy's mother contacted the police in 2025 after one of the boys told his counselor that Busfield touched his penis and his bottom. So this has evolved, something like the McMartin case. Which started in one way and ended in a complete another. So it's really interesting to see how this evolved, because one, the studio conducted their investigation, nothing there. The police conducted their investigation, nothing there. And then a year later, apparently, there's a there. What do you think about that?
what's bizarre is as we talk about these things, I think about how all of these elements will most likely come out at some point in trial, and they don't just come out in trial. Trial is its own film set where things are kind of planned and prepped. It's not like there's a bunch of surprises at trial.
Well, there are, to be sure, surprises at trial. The idea of discovery and the exchange of information is used to avoid those discoveries. But in getting to the truth, sometimes there just has to be those discoveries, because otherwise, if it doesn't happen that way, if there aren't a few surprises, the whole idea of truth can be skewed, and so invariably there are surprises, and invariably there are some moments where emotionally and verbally you can't avoid the truth coming out and just hitting you flat in the face.
So, one of the things that I like about doing this podcast is that most of what's out there is not how we've just talked, but it is that it's what's happened in the past week. So let's talk about that.
Okay.
Because we're looking at kind of the facts as an objective observer, but that's not how most of the world is looking at this case right now. At this moment, in mid-January 2026, Mr. Busfield is he's in detention in New Mexico, awaiting his next hearing, which he's way before. This is all pre-trial. Am I right about that?
Well, New Mexico is a little bit different. He hasn't even entered a plea yet. He just showed up for his first felony appearance just a few days ago. So it's interesting, but it's also interesting that he didn't wait. He turned himself in, which is different than in most of these cases. And he did appear. He's in custody, and he'll remain in custody because the prosecutor there has averred that he's a public safety risk based on these allegations.
Does it bother the prosecutor that so he was in New York and he drove all the way to New Mexico so that he didn't have to take a whole bus system of holding cells or whatever his reasoning was. But does it bother the prosecutor that he did that rather than let the marshals take him at his house in New York and bring him back?
Oh, I think it does, because if he had waited or he had, secreted himself somewhere, the prosecutor could have argued that he's a flight risk. He's not a flight risk. He came there, he turned himself in. And these allegations, I mean, if what he told the police or what the children told the police is that they tickled him on the stomach, and they tickled him on the stomach and he tickled them on the stomach and legs, and then this evolved into a touching, which at this point we don't know whether that touching occurred, over the clothes or not. But my supposition is that it probably did. And the amount of time that's gone by, the allegations, and the fact that not only is he cooperative, but he is most definitely, doing everything he can to not be a flight risk and not put himself out there as a risk or a danger to the community. It's pretty hard to argue that he is, and it's pretty hard to argue that he should remain in custody based on those things. Now, he'll get his chance. He's represented, and he'll get his chance to make the case. The only problem with all this is that in the allegations already, there's additional things. The court rulings in the Mexico matter referenced other past accusations of sexual misconduct, which, is, I think, something that could be considered in the totality of whether or not he poses a risk. And that is that there's a 1994 claim that a 17-year-old extra on the film Little Big League, which he allegedly settled. This is what Busfield allegedly settled privately after countersuing for extortion. There was an issue there. There was a 2012 allegation by a 28-year-old woman that he fondled her in a Los Angeles movie theater. No charges ever came of that. And then a reported allegation that he sexually abused a 16-year-old girl during an audition at the Sacramento theater he co-founded, which was reported in court filings, but has not led to charges. So he's got some stuff out there that complicates things in terms of whether he'll remain in custody or not. And, well, these things are going to have to be litigated, whether they're worthy of coming into this apparent trial, because it looks like that's where it's headed, or not. But these are complications.
Well, and what's interesting, it's almost like it's a mini trial to determine if he can be released on bond or detained. Because, okay, apparently other than the allegations and there's no evidence. Apparently there's no evidence that he did anything to these little boys. There's no film footage. There's no eyewitness. They don't have that.
Well, they kind of have witnesses, because when the firm did its investigation, they spoke to several witnesses. And I believe that the Albuquerque Police Department did the same.
Well, not in the moment. See, that's okay. So let's dive into the moment, because to me, there's many things here, but the moment, the act, the crime that's being alleged against the boys apparently is alleged that it happened on the film set. This is a very difficult place to commit that kind of crime, and I don't think people realize that. It's kind of like in Mission Impossible when Tom Cruise is hanging by a thread above the lasers and the floor and all that. I mean, for this guy, for Mr. Busfield, I feel like I'm in a courtroom. For Mr. Busfield to have actually pulled this off on a working film set would take quite some doing. And apparently he did it over and over and again in between takes. Now that I don't know how. You know how many people are on a film set?
Oh, yeah, definitely do.
Exactly. It's like you can have like 50, 60, 70, 80. You can have 100. There's the lights and the camera. And I mean, there's so many people. And so they want to say that the supervisor of the child supervisor was busy with first team, which, by the way, that's the lead actors, which means maybe she was starstruck and she's hanging out with the actors. And she wouldn't be the first one. I've seen it. But that doesn't matter. And I've also heard this, is that there's iPads to watch the kids so that parents can watch the video, live footage of the kids or whatever. And there's a problem. Apparently he said, we don't need those iPads on set. So if that's true, that's a problem. And if he says he did tickle them to get them ready for the scene. I actually believe that, because directors do all kinds of stuff to get people ready for a scene.
Well, yeah, but the interesting thing is it happened in 2022. Okay, so, these things didn't arise until, what, a year later?
And as a person, I can forgive the time it took to hear about it, because these things can take time. I can forgive that. But what I can't understand is that so that's a cut, and then he goes in and does the touching. Touch the front, touch the back. Okay, let's go again. And then they roll. Oh, that's a cut. And then he comes in and touches them again. It's possible, but that's a pretty wild proposition.
Anything's possible, but
it's possible.
It's just interesting the way this came down. And, when I look at it, it makes me a little suspicious because of the time element, because of the initial statements that the kids made to the police, which is what the action was, which was tickling, maybe kissing on top of the head, whatever it was. And then,
which isn't good. That's another problem. And you know what? Here, I'm going to jump in. He said, I believe it's somewhere in the documents that he did, when he said, he was asked, how well do you know them? And he said, I don't know them well at all, or something like that. This is a problem.
Well, I think the main problem here, from my perspective, is not from my perspective. I mean, you have your perspective, and that's something else. My perspective as a legal as a legal professional is that these things all occurred in a certain time sequence. And these things that I mentioned, these additional allegations. So it seems to me it's just kind of funky because it would allow time to investigate his background and then make the allegations, knowing that there were other things out there that might help them further along their claims. So you take time to investigate, you uncover that, there's these like 3 claims of other things going on. And then, of course, now this. Okay. The problem is the time and the sequence. And there's just one really big issue that bothers me. And that is that the kids said that he was tickling them. And I look at this again. So what did they say? He said Uncle Tim would tickle them on the stomach and legs. Okay. Specifically stomach and legs. Okay. It didn't say tickle them on their privates, front and back. The kids told the police when they did the investigation after the hospital notified them that it was the stomach and legs. Now they're saying that it's the genital area. Okay. Now it's the front and the back, and it has to do with the genitals and so forth. Completely different parts of the body. Now, to me, from a legal analysis, those are totally inconsistent statements. And in fact, when you go to trial, you have to deal with the jury being instructed on inconsistent statements. In New Mexico, juries are given standardized uniform jury instructions that specifically address how to evaluate witness credibility, including situations where a witness, even a child, has made prior inconsistent statements. And New Mexico follows the general rule that prior inconsistent statements are used to assess credibility, whether or not a witness is believable, not automatically to prove the truth of the earlier statement. So it's not to show that the earlier statement was true or not. It's just to show that these 2 versions are inconsistent. And you know what? How is that? Which one's true? Well, that means that whoever's saying those inconsistent statements, maybe their credibility is at risk here. Maybe they can't be believed. If a witness says something different at another time, the jury may consider that inconsistent, and the jury decides how much weight, if any, to give that type of testimony. This is a real weakness in the case. And that, to me, is the essence of where the case is going to go. What do you think?
Well, I think, as usual, I think you do a great job of laying out serious aspects and weaknesses or strengths of a case. I agree with you. So here's what I want to ask you. Did you read or did you find that his denial of knowing the boys very well could play against him?
No.
Did you see? No.
No, I don't think so. Not from a defense point of view, and I don't think from the point of view of presentation at trial. I don't think that's even relevant. I think the time sequence is relevant. I think motivation for making those accusations is relevant. What the mother's state of mind was and why she did this, and her timing, and because she was overheard by someone else, and because they'll testify to it if she denies it. If she said she's seeking revenge, right? And the kids have changed their story. How is that going to play to a jury? What would you think if someone got up and testified that, she was seeking revenge because the kids got cut from the final chapter of the series, and 2, the kids were interviewed, they told the truth to the police, and then suddenly a year later, after the police informed the parents, the mother specifically, that there was just no there, that they've changed their story now, and it's not their stomach and legs, it's something else,
My concern would be that the jury you could refocus them from inconsistencies because these are little boys, and we've all been, riled up that if there's any talk of child whatever, that we just throw out the kitchen sink of truth because it's children. It's got to be true.
Well, not necessarily. Not since McMartin. Not since the McMartin case. Do you remember that case? Years and years ago.
I don't, but I'm going to check it out. Make a note.
Shaq the McMartin case. Not
McMartin
since that
case.
case. That was
Okay.
a big case in Los Angeles.
Wow.
And what it was the police were interviewing these kids and they were using anatomical dolls. And as they were having the kids work with the dolls, they were making suggestions. Now, everybody since then, and for years and years and years, when they interview kids, they want to be very specific about what the kids say and what happened. Okay, so they don't just spend 10 minutes or 15 minutes and the kids are, they talk to the kids in general. They've got special people who focus in on this. They've got special dolls they use. They've got special ways. They film this on video. This is going to come out. You're going to have a very stark interview with these kids. These are serious allegations. And you're going to have one interview with the kids, then you're going to have another interview with the kids. And that jury is going to see those interviews, and they're going to have to decide whether or not someone in between those interviews made the suggestion that it wasn't the stomach and the legs, but it was something else, their genitals, their private parts. Okay. And that is really important. And the only person that might have made that suggestion, well, that might have been the mother, it may have been the parents. I doubt if it was the police because they concluded there was no there. And they informed the parents of it. So when they came back to hear the kids again, they were forced to have to go forward because apparently the children changed their stories and now they said he touched different areas. They have to respond to that. Okay, but if you look at the way that Mr. Busfield has handled this, there's no outward statements by him. There's just total cooperation. He surrenders. He turns himself in. His statement is, "We'll get to the truth, and I'm innocent." Okay, and that is the way the way he's rolling. If I look at the way his conduct versus their conduct, if I really get into this and I see a huge inconsistency in what the kids said at first and what they're saying later, because now they're older. Okay, they were younger, a little bit more innocent. Okay, if I see the way that the police interviewed them and it looks like they didn't make any suggestions, but allowed them to be open and transparent about what happened to them at the moment versus the second interview, and I don't know what that holds. I don't know what any of this holds because I haven't reviewed the evidence, but I'm speculating here. This might come into play. Now, I don't know. As I said, the only complications are that he has a history. Okay, and he does have somewhat of a history. And apparently, I think that was developed before the final allegation was made.
So I want to talk about history here in a second, but I just think that I'm not sure if this would be done, but I would think that if you could try to reenact, let's build a film set, let's have the kids. Apparently they were in a bed, that complicated. They're in a bedroom scene, I guess. But I don't know how. I don't know what it looks like. The camera is right there. The camera guy is not 20 feet away. The camera is right freaking there. So the camera guy's sitting there. Are you telling me the director runs in, fondles the kids, the camera guy's sitting there, nobody sees anything, and they just keep doing it over? I don't get it. I can't picture it.
Well, I don't know. I mean, on a lot of these sets, in the old days when I worked at Universal Studios, we had sets, and on those sets and in those stages, there were mobile homes parked right in there for the actors to go into, be able to get a little bit of isolation so they can concentrate.
Right. But this happened on set. This wasn't in a trailer.
These were big sets. Okay, with
I know.
homes, actually campers inside the stage, because the stage was like an airplane hangar.
Yes.
And then you could go into these,
yes.
And so they would go into the mobile homes, or they'd be parked alongside the set or whatever. I don't know where any of this stuff happened.
But that's how, if you want this case to go the way you want, then you'd say he went into their trailers alone with them.
That would be an allegation.
That would be. But this is on set during shooting. Again, it's not impossible. I want to go to the history.
Yeah.
Now, the history, see, to me, again, I'm not sure the history is the kind of history that you're looking for. Nowhere else in his history are there little boys. Okay. One of the allegations, the 28-year-old woman, the allegation is that he fondled her, I believe, what, under the skirt in a
Well,
movie
yeah,
theater
something
for
like that.
4 minutes. Did you see
Well,
that?
yeah, I'm saying in general these claims, like this 1994 claim by a 17-year-old extra, we don't know. I don't know what that claim is.
Well,
Allegedly settled privately.
well,
Okay, I don't know what's
right.
in there.
And well, before we, but I want to go with the 20-year-old woman for a second. Seriously, it says 4 minutes.
That's a long
Listen,
time.
okay, 4 minutes, it's no longer a crime. There's no way she let him do that for 4 minutes. And then it's, oh, yeah, I didn't, I'm sorry. I'm
Well,
sorry. 4 minutes.
well, here's the thing. It was filed by a 28-year-old woman, and no charges were filed. It probably was
Yeah,
settled
because the cop
civilly.
said,
I
how
don't know.
long did it go on? And she said 4 minutes. And he went,
I,
4 minutes?
I don't know.
Did you thank him?
Yeah, I don't know. But I can tell you this: that went nowhere.
I get worked up, but that one bothers me.
Yeah, yeah. The only one that's I think substantial in terms of something happening that's been reported was the allegation that he sexually abused a 16-year-old girl during an audition.
I agree with you. But see, and in that one, it says he put his hand down her pants.
Yeah, I don't.
How
really
does
don't,
that happen?
I don't know the specifics of any of those things, but these are allegations. But also,
I know, but it's too many. That's the problem.
It comes with but it also comes with the territory, celebrity territory, and that's what
and that's what I'm getting at. That's what I'm getting at because we do. Listen, I'm just gonna say it because we all know it. We have a precedent that says you can do these things. They let you. And I do. He's an A-list celebrity. If he's in a theater and something's going on for 4 minutes, I'm pretty sure there's some consent in there.
Well, I don't know, but I do know this. I don't see any of those things coming to fruition criminally. Okay, which tells me a lot. So I don't know, because in this pattern of celebrity allegation, it's not the criminal aspects of it that people go for. It's the civil aspects of it. We've spoken about this many, many times. What is the payout? Because when you're a celebrity, you have a target on your back because it's presumed that you have money, and it's presumed that the publicity in and of itself is a killer. So the best way to handle those things is to civilly compromise them, and so you pay them out. But that's a pattern that celebrities carry with them.
And I don't want to believe that the mother of the boys was this calculating. I actually don't want to believe that. And meaning, I'm not sure if I don't think I do believe that. And apparently, I mean, there's talk about bedwetting and things like that. It sounds like there was some trauma there, and I don't like that.
I don't know about that. I mean,
well,
there is, children in the movie industry historically have been a problem. There's been a lot of sexual abuse of children in the industry. The industry has gotten more sensitive to it, and I think they do a better job, but it's always been an issue.
And not see that, and I'll tell you what, and that's part of the problem, is that given the perception socially, publicly, with kids and celebrities and all this stuff, it doesn't sound like this film set. And by the way, I think Rust had the same problem, where this film set wasn't following the level of protocol that people expect, which, by the way, in Hollywood is normal.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, and you talk about the way you would monitor through what is that? How would they monitor through?
I mean, I've never heard of it, but apparently now, yeah, you can request that there's an iPad. I guess somebody holds an iPad, like a production assistant, holds an iPad aimed at the child the entire time they're on set.
I mean, that seems to be a pretty good thing to do.
I mean, it does make sense.
It's just like if you're on the set
But
and
that
you're
requires
handling,
somebody to do it. And,
let's say,
that gets pretty complicated.
yeah, let's say you're on the set and you're handling firearms. It's always good for someone to check the
Oh,
firearm to make sure there's not a
well,
live load in there.
and and since we're
You know what I mean?
since we've weaved
Yeah,
Russ into this, I'm just gonna say this
yeah.
too, is that I've worked in the props department, and I also think that there are some places where people get kind of crazy, and if there are guns, we're not gonna go into Rust, but I do know that there's this need to save money. Everybody can understand the need to save money, and people cut corners, and I think that this is what happened. I think there was a need to save money. They were cutting corners financially. There's also, people on set that are supposed to be doing one thing, if they can talk to Tom Cruise and Robert Redford all day, that's what they're going to do. And
Yeah,
so
no, I get it. I mean, I
it's
get it, but
Hollywood.
there's a protocol. Okay.
Yes.
And so actors need to be protected in terms of firearms, and children need to be protected in terms of sexual abuse. We know that. And you know
Yes.
what? And the parallel here is that maybe protocol wasn't followed. And the parallel here
we're used
is
to
that,
this. Our expectations are
Yeah.
almost never met in reality.
Well, that's probably true, but the idea to have these protocols, these are very good ideas, and that's what I'm saying. I think that these have evolved over time and make the set better. But let's just say they're not followed, our corners are cut, are short shrifted. Then you get into these areas of civil and criminal liability, and sometimes true accusations and sometimes false accusations. And then you've got to examine this in general and then get down to the specifics. And I say that in general, it's problematic because there's a lot of stuff on both ends that may lead you to be a little bit gray about maybe what happened. But I think specifically, and I'm just honing down into the central issue, is what the children said. That is an issue,
Right.
and that,
Well,
if it comes down to prior inconsistent statements, and they have demonstrative evidence of these things, and the jury can assess for itself whether or not stories changed over time, and I think that's a central issue here. If of course they don't have an eyewitness who can corroborate what the kids are saying, and so far 2 investigations say no. A third one is based on the child's changing their story. So this to me is not the strongest case in the world.
no, and at the same time, I wish he had not been tickling them. I think that all of us today in 2026, when a grown man tickles a child, we all kind of shudder. And so that's unfortunate, but it's real. And in fact, it's in the I think in the arrest warrant that somebody in the hair and makeup department, and they see a lot of stuff in hair and makeup, described him as creepy. So if people around the set already thought he was kind of creepy, which again, let's go back to if people think he's creepy, how is he going to pull this off in between takes on a live set? It's so weird. This is such a weird story.
That's what I'm saying. In general, there's a lot of area for gray. Let's see what happens specifically when it gets down to cases, which means let's see what happens at trial. This should be an interesting trial, and the demonstrative evidence that's what this case is going to turn on.
So we're going to call this Timothy Busfield pretrial detainment.
Okay.
Because we're going to come back to this case when we know more.
Okay. This has been a good discussion, I think.
Do we leave anything out? I think we got most of it.
I don't think so.
All
I
right.
think we got most of it.
All right. Well, then you've been listening to Sex Crimes Defense Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Please join us on the next one, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us.